Hello and welcome to today's episode of the 15-minute MMA podcast with me, Jordan from Smash MMA. As usual, we're going to be talking through this weekend's fight night cards, including the UFC card headlined by Marvin Vettori taking on Roman Dolidze. We're also going to be touching on the Cage Warriors card from this weekend, which is an absolute banger of a card. And then we're going to be taking a look at UFC London next weekend, headlined by Leon Edwards taking on Sean Brady. As usual, if you don't already, don't forget to drop us a subscribe on the channel. We drop this every Sunday night, along with some great interviews with some of the best up-and-coming prospects from the UK, so you're not going to want to miss those ones. So don't forget to drop a subscribe, ring that bell, and keep an eye on what's going on the channel. So, UFC this weekend, headlined by Vettori versus Dolidze in the main event. Dolidze defeated Marvin Vettori this weekend by decision. Pretty dominant fight, to be honest. He controlled a lot of this one. I think it was kind of expected. Surprised really that Dolidze came into this as the underdog. I personally thought, after the performances recently from Vettori, which were a lot of Marvin Vettori getting punched in the face, I'm not thinking too much into the Paulo Costa fight because I think Costa's another guy that's on the decline at the moment. So for me, as expected, Dolidze getting the win in this one. Pretty, not the most eventful, but a pretty dominant performance from him. Following the fight, he called out Israel Adesanya, which is crazy to think at this point in time. If we'd have spoke about this a year ago, you would have thought that Izzy would be a massive favourite and would piece him up. But a very different world we're in now. It's already coming out pretty even. I mean, you'd like to think that Izzy would have it, but Dolidze's on the rise. I think he's got that loss back against Vettori. He's looked pretty consistent in this one, so an interesting one. I'd be down for Dolidze versus Izzy. I think that'd be a great fight for both guys. Dolidze have an opportunity to try and push on and move up in the division. Izzy, it will be the perfect fight to prove that he's still one of the best middleweights in the world and that he should be back in that conversation. So an interesting outcome from that, and I think that's probably what I'd like to see happen, and it'd be a good fight for both guys. Rounding out some of the other fights on this card, as everyone on the internet's mentioned numerous times, it's not the most star-packed card. You've got Chidi Nakano defeating Zaleski by KO in the second round, which was a pretty decent knockout. Naughty knee to take him down, and then he's finished him with a few elbows, so good performance from him. Alexander Hernandez, you might remember him from back in the day in the Donald Cerrone fight where he talked a lot of shit and Cerrone basically gave you what for. He picked up the win against Holloway in that one. Another pretty uneventful fight, to be honest. He just did what he needed to do to get the job done. Rounding out some of the other fights on this card, and unusual, I don't feel like I've seen a Kimura in a main event fight for a while, and then we've got two on this card. Damon Blackshear submitting Cody Gibson by Kimura, and then in the fight before that, Brenson Ribeiro submitting Nurzagay by Kimura as well, so that was quite an interesting one. And then rounding this card out, a massive prospect coming out of Argentina, and that's Kevin Vallejos. A lot of people talking about him online at the moment as being a pretty big thing in the future. He picked up a absolutely fantastic knockout on Song Woo Chi, nasty overhand right, and then he put the pressure on and got the stoppage. Brilliant performance from him. 14-1, only loss being to Gian Silva, who got that incredible head kick finish last week. He's another in this new breed of featherweights that are coming through. We really are seeing at the moment some of the old guard sort of leaving the UFC, or let's not say leaving the UFC, but we're seeing some of the older fighters almost reaching the end of their career, and now we're starting to see the next generation, and Vallejos has got a massive future. Brilliant finish for him, and definitely a guy to look out for. Moving on now, and we're going to touch a little bit on the Cage Warriors card from this weekend, because a lot of these Cage Warriors cards can have one or two big names and one or two big prospects, but this card was absolutely stacked. The main event, we've got Luke Riley, possibly one of the best featherweights outside the UFC at the moment, in his 11th and final appearance for Cage Warriors. He took on Abasov, who was the #1 ranked guy in the Balkan region of Europe. He's a grappler. He's got some steady boxing, but I think it's his grappling that really is his strength, if you like. And he showed that in this fight. In the first round, he gave Riley a lot of problems. I'd probably say Abasov took the first round. He controlled him with the grappling, put a lot of pressure. Riley was defending it pretty well. Abasov wasn't doing a lot of damage in this fight, but he was controlling it and he was giving Luke a lot of things to think about. But as the second round came out, I think Abasov started to tire and Luke really started to lay it on him at that point. So a good result for Luke Riley. The end of his Cage Warriors contract. He nearly appeared on the Contender Series last year, and for whatever reason, the visa issues sort of prevented that from happening. It's got to be the time now for him to get on that card, and if he's not going to be going to the UFC, then I would like to think that your likes of your PFL or your Octagons are going to be sniffing around Luke, because he's a massive talent and he's got a really big future. Some of the other guys on this card, so Teddy Stringer, another guy, a brilliant amateur career, had a lot of amateur fights. He returned in his fifth fight to go 5-0 with a submission win over the experienced Antonio Sheldon. Good performance from him, pretty dominant. He's someone to watch out for, and I think one or two more wins, you're probably going to be seeing him looking at Contender Series type vibes. Adam Cullen, I could say the same things about Adam as I could say about Teddy. He also picked up the win, first round TKO. Another dominant performance. Nonato Jr. I think stepped in at pretty short notice. This fight was only made last week, and you could tell that there's levels to this, and Cullen really dominated this fight. Rounding out the main card, we've got Jack Humphreys in his third pro fight, picking up a second round submission. Now, this was probably for me the performance of the night on this card. His striking was very good. He landed a very good head kick that started to wobble him. He's got really good hands, Jack Humphreys. It's amazing that it's only his third fight. He had quite a lot of amateur fights. He represented England at the IMAF tournaments a couple of times as well. So he's a cracking lad from Warsaw in the Midlands, so not too far away from me. Big future for Jack. Really looking forward to seeing him get in, but I think that performance really showed that we're going to see a lot from Jack Humphreys, and I don't think it's going to be too long before he's chasing Cage Warriors bantamweight gold. And like I've mentioned with Cullen and Stringer before, he's a few fights away. He keeps doing this, he's going to be getting his name noticed and he's going to start getting in the right circles. Final fight on this one I'm going to talk about, Emil Brown, who won the Cage Warriors Contender Tournament. I think it's a 50 grand prize he won a couple of months back last year. He got a KO against Samuel Blasco, who's given quite a few people some problems at Cage Warriors. Another really good prospect. There's some great guys coming out of the UK at the moment, and this card is a really good showcase of that. So really enjoyed this one, looking forward to the next one, and if you're not aware of these boys before, keep your eyes peeled, because there's some massive futures for some of these Cage Warriors lads, especially on this card. Moving on now, and we're going to be diving a little bit deeper into next weekend's UFC card, which is UFC London, headlined by Leon Edwards taking on Sean Brady. Now, this fight was not what we were expecting to have, if I'm being completely honest. Initially, it was booked. We've got Leon Edwards taking on JDM, and that was going to be a battle of the strikers. A lot of people were really excited for that fight, and it was going to be an entertaining stand-up battle. That is going to be completely different now. Sean Brady is a top-tier wrestler. He's very, very good with his takedowns. I mean, his takedown average is 3.5 completed takedowns a fight, which is pretty high for the sort of standard in that division and in the UFC on the whole. And when he gets people down, he tends to keep them down. But Leon Edwards, we've seen in the past, Edwards in both of those Usman fights, Edwards' takedown defence is not to be sniffed at. He's very good at staying on his feet. So this should be quite interesting. I think Leon is starting to be, I won't quite say on a downward curve, because that would be harsh. He has only lost to Bilal. But this is the same Bilal that he dominated for a round and a bit a few years ago when they had their fight in the Apex. So I'm not too sure what to expect in this one. I have a feeling that unfortunately Sean Brady's going to be controlling this fight with his grappling, but I think we'll find out within the first couple of minutes of the first round. If Brady gets that takedown, I think that's what we're going to see a lot of. However, if Leon can defend that takedown, it's going to give him, it's going to do him the world of good. It's going to give him a massive confidence boost, and I think that first takedown and how that pans out is probably a big indicator of where this fight's going to go. But a cracking little main event in the London card, and it's a fight that we've got a lot to think about in. So, you know, it's not quite Edwards JDM, which I think I and a lot of other people would have preferred to see, but it's not a bad main event. In the co-main, we've got a huge fight. Jan Blachowicz taking on Carlos Ulberg, and this is a big one, especially for Carlos Ulberg. Now, we know a lot about Blachowicz. We know he's a former light heavyweight champion. We know he's a very good all-round fighter. We know he's got that Polish power. Carlos Ulberg's been on a very good run, and I think it's almost like a gatekeeper fight. If you can get through Blachowicz, then I think we're going to be seeing huge things from Ulberg. If that doesn't quite pan out, if Blachowicz finishes this one and puts an end to Ulberg's hype, do we start to think about a Jan Blachowicz title opportunity again? I mean, he's getting quite old now. He's been around the game for quite a while. So, it might be too late for another surge, but then the bigger the weights go, the less the age has a massive impact. So, it's a big fight. A lot could happen. Personally, I'm leaning in the direction of Carlos Ulberg, but it's close. It's a tight one. So I'm probably, if anything, I'm going to sit on the fence a little bit with this one because I'm not quite too sure where it could go. Next, coming down on the card, and we've got the very popular Molly McCann. Now, this is a very interesting one because initially Molly was stated to face Estela Nunes. Now, Estela Nunes is on a 4-fight losing streak. It was a brilliant fight for Molly to come into with the upper hand based on current form, and it could have given that sort of confidence boost to get her back into looking towards a ranked spot, because a lot of people, myself included, really would like to see Molly have that big push towards gold or get some big exciting fights. Unfortunately, Nunes has had to pull out due to visa issues, and she's been replaced by Alexia Tayanara. Now, this is a completely different ballgame. Tayanara is 11-1. She's on a 9-fight win streak. She won a Contender Series fight last year to earn a contract. She's going to be coming into this and looking for blood. Fair play to Molly for taking the fight on short notice. I think that considering how different a challenge it is, you've got a lot of respect to Molly for wanting to get in the cage. It's as I say, it shuffled from Molly being a heavy favourite to being a slight underdog. But she's got a lot to prove. She's got a lot of heart. She's a very high-level fighter. So we're obviously on this side of the pond going to be really rooting for Molly McCann to get a result in this one. But it's going to be a very interesting fight facing someone with such a good record, currently the #1 ranked women's strawweight in Brazil as well. So it's going to be an interesting one. I think we're going to learn a lot from this one. If Molly gets the win and halts that momentum, then I really think this could be a good surge for her. Massive fight, really interesting one. And hopefully Molly can pull through, because we've talked about this being a short notice fight for her. It's a short notice fight for both of these girls. So interesting one. Touch wood. Best of luck to Molly on this one. Get another win for the UK. The fun fights on this card continue with Nathaniel Wood facing former Cage Warriors champion Morgan Charrier. Now, this is going to be a really interesting one. This could almost be the fans' fight of the night. From our perspective, it's two guys with very good striking. UK fans have seen a lot of Morgan Charrier, and he's a very exciting guy to watch. Nathaniel Wood is one of the most exciting UK featherweights coming through at the moment, so it's a big opportunity for him to make a statement and start to show that he deserves to be fighting top 15 opponents. Charrier has an interesting run in the UFC so far, but again, both of these guys have got everything to gain and nothing to lose from this fight. It's going to be a really interesting one. Like I say, they're both going to throw hands. We'll see how it pans out. Next up on the card, it's a bit of an unusual one for a UK card, to be honest. We've got Kevin Holland taking on Gunnar Nelson. Now, this is weird for a number of reasons. The last few Kevin Holland fights that we've seen, it's almost looked like any sign of grappling, and Holland's decided that he's just not really interested. And then he's chosen to face Gunnar Nelson, who is, by all accounts, a grappler, and a very good one. He's going to be looking to take full advantage of Holland's reluctance to grapple. I think in this fight we're going to see Nelson shoot pretty early. Unless we have a Masvidal Askren style situation where Holland catches Gunnar as he's coming in, I think it's going to be Gunnar Nelson taking Kevin Holland to the ground, controlling him and dominating these fights. I wouldn't be surprised to see a Gunnar Nelson submission as well. That's how confident I think I am in this one. Strange fight for Holland to take. I don't know if he's just running out his fights on the remainder of his contract and trying to get it done and out of the way, because it's a bit of an unusual one. But I can only see this going one way, and that's Gunnar Nelson. The final fight of the main card, and we've got a big UK fan favourite, a guy who a lot of people in the UK were really looking forward to getting into the UFC, and that is Jordan the Epidemic Vucenic. And he's going to be taking on someone who is probably as popular north of the border, and that's Chris Duncan. And this is, I know I've just said there's a potential fight in the night with Nathaniel Wood and Morgan Charrier, but this is another one that could be a real banger. Both of these guys have got a lot to prove. Vucenic coming off the back of a loss on his debut at pretty short notice. Chris Duncan is someone who a lot of people think has a big future. It's interesting, really. I think I would probably personally have preferred to have seen these two boys facing non-UK guys. It's a bit of an odd one that we sort of thrown them against each other, but it's a big opportunity. It's two very well matched guys. They're both very good strikers. They've both got very good grappling too. It's two pretty good all-round fighters. Both of these guys are quite popular. I think they're going to both come out and look to make a statement in the UFC and really cement themselves as UFC fighters, because we know what these things can be like. You get a couple of fights on your deal, and if it doesn't pan out, then you're sort of farmed off and you're gone again. Both of these two guys aren't going to want to be going down that road, so I think they're both going to have a lot to prove, and it's going to be a cracking little fight. So really looking forward to this one. Personally, I'm leaning in the direction of Vucenic. I think he's going to come back and get the win in this fight, but I'm pretty on the fence. I don't really know where it's going to go. But really excited to see this one. Finishing things off as well, we've got the prelims, which is full of UK prospects that are looking really good. A special shout out I'm going to give to Nathan Fletcher facing Colin Loughran. This is a fight we've talked about before. It's a rematch from their amateur days in which Fletcher won, and there's a little bit of fire in it because of that. There's been some debate between members of Fletcher's gym, Next Generation MMA, and Loughran and his team as well, so there's a little bit of bad blood in this one, and this could be another little bit of a sleeper. Fletcher's an absolute fucking high level grappler. He's very, very good with his takedowns and with his submissions. Loughran is, I'll probably say in this one, Fletcher's a much better grappler than Loughran, but Loughran probably has the advantage in the striking, so it should be an interesting matchup. We know that styles make fights, and I'm personally, I think Fletcher's going to be looking to get the takedown pretty quickly, and you know, there's a reason they're calling the Southport Strangler. He's going to be looking to get the fight to the ground, and he's going to be looking to get Loughran's neck. If Loughran can keep it standing, we might have an interesting fight, but I think if I was a betting man, which sometimes I can be, I would be picking Fletcher in this one. Other fights on this card, we've got Mick Parkin, the big lad from up north. We've also got Loan Kavanagh, who had a fantastic knockout win on his Contender Series fight and in his UFC debut, so he's a very exciting guy at flyweight. We've got Jai Herbert, the Black Country Banger. He's had a lot of good performances, known for the knockdown that he gained on Ilia Topuria as Topuria is moving up through the ranks. This is a really good showcase fight card of British MMA, and I'm really looking forward to catching it as well. That'll be all from me this week, guys. You can catch me on Instagram at smesh.mma, so please let me know your thoughts on this one and all the other fights on this card. And you can catch this show. We're going to be dropping it every Sunday night now on YouTube. This is its YouTube debut. It's also on Spotify podcasts, Apple podcasts, all of that sort of jazz. So thanks, guys, and I'll catch you next week.